Hello and welcome to another video on Gran Turismo Sport, and today we've got something different for you. This is round 2 of the Sim2Race Championship presented by Thunderwood Racing and Team Horny Racing, and it's a championship for real drivers to win a real prize of funding towards race fees once the season gets underway in real life. So having a look then, we are at a very wet Red Bull ring, and yeah, we're in the four-wheel drive Nissan GTR, all Group 4 cars this race, and we've chosen GTR for its four-wheel drive, and we can see there the Hurricane up the inside of us, but we stick to the outside and just managed to fend him off, being able to get on the power nice and early using that four-wheel drive system. Completely manual start then, no traction control allowed, so we had to go very careful on the throttle going off the line. And then as we head up into the hairpin then for the first time, sticking to the inside line, making sure we get it stopped with plenty of time. We don't want to go too deep too early on and end up losing a lot of time to T2. We know we've got quite a lot of pace here, so we did qualify on pole position, as you can see, and I think we were almost 2 seconds ahead of T2, so we clearly did a decent amount of practice in the wet. As we head downhill, very tricky braking zone there in the wet. You don't want to go too hard on the brakes because you just skid straight off into the gravel and lose loads and loads of time. So the format of this championship then is a 10-minute qualifying session followed by a 15-minute sprint race and then a second 15-minute sprint race with a reverse grid. So this is round 2. In round 1 we secured pole position in the qualifying, but unfortunately we finished second in the first race, and then in the reverse grid race we managed to fight up to third, but both races that week, last week, were won by Rob Dowsett. So he's the current championship leader, and today in this race I believe he qualified in 5th place, but he's down in 7th now in the BMW, so he's going to be struggling in the wet. As you can see, the caution, keep the safe distance sign on the Nissan GTR, and the cars behind are clearly reading that sign and putting it into good practice, giving me a nice gap up ahead, as we can see there. So Rob in the BMW is going to be struggling in the wet. So going into this race we were told that it may be wet, but it may be dry, so we didn't really know. So you can see there's quite a selection of cars that people have gone for. I've obviously chosen a four-wheel drive in anticipation that it may rain, and we went with the GTR. It's not the fastest car in the wet, but it's very capable, but it also has good top speed for the dry, so it's kind of a best of both. It's not the fastest in either the dry or the wet, but it can do a good job in both of them. So jumping forwards a bit onto the end of lap 3, and you can see we've got a nice gap over the car behind, and yeah, all we need to do is just bring this race home really, make sure we don't make any mistakes. But it's important to note that there is a championship point on offer for the fastest lap. So now we've got a nice 5-second lead. We're going to go for a bit of a hot lap just to make sure that no one has a chance of catching up with us. So braking 50 metres earlier than we need to, nice and slow into the corner, early on the throttle but not to full throttle. You just want to make sure that you're pointing in the right direction before you get on the full throttle. But as we head up the hill then, you can brake fairly late in the wet because we're going uphill. So on the 150 metre board here, down into first gear to get it rotated. Again, little dab of the throttle, and then once we're in a straight line we can floor it, short shifting a little bit up to second and through the gears as we head down into the hardest part of the track in the wet at least. So we want to brake before the 150 metre board here, very careful on the brakes, slowly down through the gears, and then using a little bit of curb just to drag us round. And we can get on the power quite early then, and that again helps to rotate the car. And then a very awkward off camber left corner here, and we want to go down into second gear. Once it starts to turn, short shift up to third so we can get flat on the power and have a nice straight exit out of the corner, and then again down to second here. Just keep it as close to the curb as we can, and then once we feel it rotate we can get on the power. So it's very important in the wet, especially at this track, to take quite tight lines if you go out too wide, it just seems to take an age to get the car to turn, and then obviously you've had to travel a bigger distance as well. So braking 50 metres again earlier, using a little bit of curb just to drag us round. Down into second for the last corner, and early turning, again using that curb, and that just really nicely rotates the car, and then we can get on the power nice and early, and across the line to set a 1 minute 49.4. So I think the next fastest lap in this race from anyone else was maybe a 51.0, so very, very quick in this race we were. But now that's done, we're just going to relax a little bit. We don't want to push it too much, don't want to make any more mistakes. We've got a nice 7.5 second gap to the car behind with 5 minutes remaining. So last thing we want to do is bin it into the gravel, because we'll definitely lose a whole chunk of time. So we're going to jump forwards onto the last lap then, as we bring it around the last few corners, and you can see the gap is nearly up to 13 seconds now. So it's been very dominant drive, really, if I do say so myself, in the wet. So the car choice clearly worked out very well for me here, and yeah, we'll have to see what the weather is like for the reverse grid race coming up shortly, as we head round the final corner then, and flash of the headlights just to indicate how happy I am taking first victory this year in Sim2Race round 2. And you can see a big gap there to the two cars behind, who look like they've had a very good battle all race actually, the Hurricane and the Subaru there. So victory in race 1, on to round 2, and the track has dried out. So we're going to be starting from the back in the reverse grid race on a dry track. So really we would have rather started at the back in a wet race, but we're going to see what we can do. So four-wheel drive is always going to have a good start, and we get off the line here. I think there's a bit of a false start up ahead, slow starting Jaguar. The two front wheel drive cars are very slow off the line. That's a characteristic of the front wheel drive cars in this game. We're going to stick to the outside, just try and avoid trouble. There's a bit of a Subaru and the Alpha come together there, but we just about managed to avoid it. And now this is where the GTR is going to have the advantage over the Subaru in the dry. It's not going to be particularly fast in a straight line, that Subaru. And you can see all the way up the hill, we're gaining. Nice and late on the brakes now with the extra grip that we have, and already we're right on the back of the GTR up ahead, the fellow GTR. But we're already up into fourth place then, so we've had an absolutely cracking start. But we can see up ahead, Rob in the BMW has also had a great start. Obviously he started a few places ahead of us, as he finished 5th in the first race, as he makes a move for the lead of the race. So we're going to need to get ahead of these two cars as quick as we can if we want a chance of challenging Rob for the victory, because it's going to be very, very hard to catch up with him, especially when he's in that BMW. BMW is very, very quick in this infield section. The GTR has the advantage on the straight line, so on both the straights, but the BMW in this midsection, the infield section, is very, very quick. It's got very good turning, so yeah, it has a massive advantage there. And the four-wheel drive of the Nissan just lets it down a little bit in the twisty corners. So crossing the line then, and to complete that one, and we've already moved up into 3rd place. So absolutely dream start for us then, really. I definitely wasn't expecting to be up to 3rd by the end of the first lap. If anything, I thought it would be quite difficult to gain positions with this car choice, and on this particular track as well. Group 4 can be a little bit difficult to overtake sometimes, but I think going from the wet to the dry, it takes a very unique skill, really, because you're not up to speed in the dry, and you just kind of have to have the confidence that the grip's there. And we've obviously done quite well with that, as has Rob up ahead as well. So already we're on the back of the Jaguar of Josh, who is racing in Sim2Race for his first season this year. And we are very close then down the hill, and we're going to look to just try and put a bit of pressure on him, see if we can force him into mistake, and then get after Rob as quick as we can. And just going into the left-hander here then, Josh has got on the power a bit too early. He's had to back out of that and off onto the rumble strip, and that gives us the position. So up into 2nd place now, chasing down Rob and we've got 12 minutes to try and see if we can catch up. But already Rob's got a 2.7 second advantage. So Rob being the quick driver that he is, I think, you know, we're going to do well if we can bridge 2.8 now almost seconds over 12 minutes. But obviously also there's a point on offer for the fastest lap, so we need to make sure we get that as well, especially if Rob's going to finish ahead of us in this race. So jumping forwards then on to lap 7, and you can see the gap is exactly the same, 2.7 seconds. The whole race it's kind of been yo-yoing between me gaining in the first half of the lap on the straights, as you'll see here, and then Rob gaining through the second half of the lap. But we've had a very good turn 1 then, and Rob, I think, has got a penalty just up ahead, which he'll be slowing down just a little bit earlier for than he needs to. So we're going to really push hard in this lap, as we have been with all the laps really, and see if we can gain any more time. And you can see what I mean just about how much time we gain the first section of the track. So it's already down to 2.2 now as we head down the hill into the tricky braking zone, and we go in a little bit deep but kind of get away with it. We can get on the power nice and early there in the GTR, and down to 2.1 seconds now. But you'll see here Rob will start to gain time on us again, just as the BMW is able to turn in much easier than the GTR, and despite us trying the best we can, yeah, he's just going to pull away from us a little bit through this last section of the lap, and especially these final 2 corners as well. Quite difficult in the GTR, it's quite a heavy car, likes to understeer, you have to get on the power a little bit late there, and then good exit out of the final corner. We go across the line then to set the fastest lap of the race so far, and you can see Rob has gained another couple of tenths in that final sector. So overall we've gained on him on that lap, and we just need to carry on pushing as hard as we can to see if we can get onto the back of him and maybe put him under a bit of pressure over the last couple of laps. So just 3 minutes remaining then, and as we head up the hill, gaining with our top speed advantage, going into the hairpin, you can see the gap's just dipped under 2 seconds for the first time, and that definitely gives me a bit of momentum mentally, and Rob is definitely going to be starting to feel the pressure now, seeing those lap times, or the delta I should say, come down. We're going to jump forwards here then onto the final lap, and you can see we've been gaining, but it's still just not quite enough to bridge the gap and get into the slipstream. So 1.6 seconds now, and again coming out of this hairpin, and with the 4-wheel drive you get a very good exit. You can get on the throttle so early in the dry out of that hairpin, and that just allows us to close right up onto the back of Rob as we head down the hill. See, 1.4 seconds now, so maybe a couple more laps and we would have been able to get up close and maybe battle for the lead. And it is a bit of a shame because obviously we would have had the advantage on the straight, so had we been able to get within that slipstream range, I think it would have been quite difficult for Rob to defend against us with our straight line advantage. And then if we did manage to get into the lead through this section that Rob would have been quicker than us through, he would have struggled to make a move. So yeah, a bit of a shame we didn't quite have the pace to bridge the gap, but it was always going to be a big ask being only 3 seconds behind once we got into second place. So round the final corner then on the last lap, we can see Rob coming across the line to claim another victory in Sim2Race, and ourselves finishing in second place. So in terms of the championship, that has moved myself joint into the lead with Rob. However, one round can be dropped at the end of the championship, so if we were to drop our worst rounds each so far, Rob would be ahead by 2 points. So 2 more rounds to go, and we'll have to see if we can bring the fight to Rob.